Good morning, this is Ben, and I'm going to respond to a short video from Sam Harris, Choosing the Right Religion, users, free thinker. Get right into it. Sam immediately poses a question: which is more likely, that this is a bunch of competing tribes, Christianity, Islam, Jews, and all these different religions? Is this a bunch of competing tribes, or is this really the word of God? And just let me introduce that perhaps it's a bunch of tribes competing with the word of God. To me, that's a more likely scenario when you see the diversity, when you see the ferocity. It seems like they're competing to get something with real force and strength. So when you see the variety and the tenacity with which people disagree in religious belief, it makes sense to think that they're attacking something that they're afraid is real and that seems real to them. And that's most easily explained by the fact that it is real. And so it makes perfect sense to introduce the third option, Sam, that they're not all fake, but perhaps one of them's true and the rest are competing tribes. And it would make perfect sense, because that would create exactly the kind of situation we have where one of them confounds all the others and keeps them angry. Of course, Sam referenced the issue of birth, and he says, it doesn't make sense for this person, all the Muslims to be born to Muslim families and all the Christians to be born to Christian families, if there was actual truth in religion. And the simple reality is that if there's only one right religion, then the rest of it, of course, if you're, in other words, if you're going to be wrong, there's a lot of ways to be wrong. And as you point out, as Sam pointed out, only one of them can be right. They're exclusive of each other. They contradict each other. They all have their own unique view. And so if only one of them can be right, then it makes sense that all the other ones are wrong at best. Unless they're all wrong, right? But the point is this, is that if you're going to be wrong, you might as well be wrong in the way your mom and daddy's wrong. So the question would be, I'm a Christian, so are all the Christians, that's the real question. The issue is not, Muslims born to Muslim families and Buddhists born to Buddhist families. That, from the Christian perspective, that makes perfect sense. If they're not going to accept Christ, they would just go with whatever their parents go with. And the simple response is that while most of America in the West claims to be Christian, not so many of them actually are. And the numbers are kind of low. I think it's more like in the 30%, somewhere in the 30s% of people who actually claim that they, converted and were persuaded to believe and gave their life to Jesus and all that. Whereas it's in the 80s for people who say, I'm a Christian, because, that's just nominally. And so this distinction is important, because that would mean that most people born to Christian families are not Christian. And in fact, most people in Christian world didn't really have the conversion experience that the Bible talks about, in such great detail. And Sam even mentioned it. You have to believe in Jesus. And most of these people, claim they didn't have a moment where they said, yeah, I converted and I decided to believe in Jesus. But they will say, yeah, I'm a Christian. And that's huge. Furthermore, you look in other parts of the world, the Christian numbers aren't as low as we might think they are. But it would, in other words, some people think that you go to the Middle East and a lot of people would deconvert given the legal chance and things like this. And do we expect a hegemony where it's like the exact same percentile in every country? Of course not. And in fact, if there is a God, we have to introduce that option. If there is a God, He controls where people will be born. He's like a overseer of time. And then the issue of Christian particularism was raised, where Sam was talking about, oh, well, what if, why do these people get a chance to hear this religion and these people don't? And the response, there's actually a biblical response. I'll just come over here and read it. Why not, But anyway, it's Paul speaking to the Athenians, and he's responding. Let's see. Go. Acts 17:26. Well, I'll just go to the chapter. And the thing about this is Paul talking to people who weren't Jews at all, and so he had to kind of take a back step and rethink and explain the fundamentals of his faith. But he says in his speech to the Athenians, he says, and he would be God, that's who he's talking about, has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and boundaries of their dwellings, so that they should seek the Lord in hope that they might grope for Him and find Him, though He is not far from each one of us. And that flies in the face of everything Sam just said, that because what he's saying is God controls everything that happens to you and has designed it that you would seek Him, and if you will, He's not far from each one of us. The simple point is, the gospel message to be a Christian is not indivisible. There are points to it, and this is something that we need to understand. The gospel message starts with, the fact of God and His goodness and His authority, and then it moves on to man's guilt. If you won't accept those two, then there's no need for salvation if there's no problem of guilt. And in fact, most religions teach the problem of guilt, but they say that it's not so bad, and that because they teach a different solution to it than the Christian solution, because they say, if you just straighten up, basically, you'll be all right. So they don't accept the problem of guilt in the full weight in the way that the Christians do. And so, just like the verse said, if you will seek Him, He's not far from each one of us. So there. Stop there.